2025 top prospect AJ Dybantsa is choosing between 7 schools, including a surprise team in the Big 12.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host for today's show, Andy Patton, and you are joining at the place to get your college basketball content every single day right here on Locked On College Basketball. You can also find the show ad-free on Amazon Music if you have not checked it out there. Special shout out to those of you who are everyday listeners and those of you who are hanging out with us in our Discord channel. It is free to join if you have not done so yet. There's a link in your show notes on audio and video platforms. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. It's the dog days of summer. The sports aren't sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lots of great stuff for you on today's episode as we get out of our transfer portal series. Over the last 6 episodes, Isaac and I talking about transfer portal classes for every Power 5 conference, as well as the mid-majors on Monday's show. Today, we got a lot of different topics. Why didn't USA basketball field a more competitive 3-on-3 men's team? We're going to talk about that and some colleges where they might have been able to field a team more competitive. We're also going to talk about Butler's big week on the recruiting trail. We're going to also talk here to start the show about the best high school player in the country, the consensus #1 overall prospect in the 2025 recruiting class, AJ Dybantsa. This news came out late last week. He has officially revealed his top 7 list. These are a list of 7 schools that he will be choosing between to decide where he's going to start his college basketball career and probably finish his college basketball career. There's very little expectation for AJ Dybantsa to spend more than 1 season at the college basketball ranks. He is a premier talent in the high school ranks. Again, outside of Cooper Flagg coming in this year, AJ Dybantsa is the most exciting player who has not yet played college basketball, and for very good reason. Dybantsa's top 7. Here is the list. You could probably figure out which direction we're going to go after hearing the list. Alabama, Auburn, Baylor, BYU, Kansas, Kansas State, North Carolina. So you got 2 schools in the SEC, you got 4 schools in the Big 12, you got 1 school in North Carolina in the ACC. That is not, however, the direction that we are going to go with this show. We got to talk about the fact that BYU is on this list. Cue up the music. One of these things is not like the other. BYU, not typically a power in terms of recruiting high-level talent out of the high school recruiting ranks. They've obviously had high-level talent in their program. They have churned out NBA stars. They've had some of the best players in college basketball, the Jimmer Fredettes of the world, which is related to our conversation later in the show about Team USA's 3-on-3 team, as Jimmer was a part of that team. Unfortunately got injured, which led to the Team USA's struggles, but I digress. BYU has had a lot of talent, but they haven't recruited anywhere near this kind of level than what they have been doing the last couple of months under new coach Kevin Young. And there are a variety of factors here. They've landed a couple high-profile players coming into the program who were decommits from other programs. Not saying that that is an easier way to recruit. In some ways it is more difficult, but it does allow them to bring in some players who had previously committed to other programs. And while I think Kevin Young deserves a ton of credit, not only him, but the staff that he has hired to quickly take a new job after being a head coach or an assistant coach with the Phoenix Suns, to transition to college basketball, to bring in a staff and to start immediately landing some of the best recruits in program history is a huge accomplishment. The caveat, of course, as many of you have probably already figured out, is that BYU just moved into a high major conference, and not just a high major conference, the Big 12. There is a lot riding on BYU's success in the Big 12. This is a program that has historically had outstanding fan engagement. Every game at the Marriott Center is a really, really tough draw for the opponent. That place is packed. It is loud. It is enthusiastic. But BYU spent 10 years in the WCC unable to break through. They couldn't get past Gonzaga. Some years they couldn't get past St. Mary's. They rarely finished even second in the WCC. It didn't have the effect that BYU hoped it would when they joined the WCC. They then get the invitation to join the Big 12 in all of this realignment chaos that has happened. And they have a lot of success in their first year in the Big 12, so much so that it leads to Mark Pope ultimately leaving his job at BYU to go take his dream job at Kentucky, where he was a player in the 90s, team captain for the team that won it all in 1996 under Coach Rick Pitino. It looked like things could be going in a not so good direction for BYU. And yet instead, in their class coming in the 2024 class, they have Kanan Catchings, who is a decommit from Purdue. He is the highest rated high school recruit in BYU history, according to 24/7 Sports. They have Brody Kozlowski, who is the 5th highest ranked recruit in BYU basketball history. They have Elijah Crawford, who's a Stanford decommit. He is the 8th highest rated recruit in BYU basketball history. Brooks Barr is 18th. 4 players in the 2024 recruiting class. Again, all players committed to BYU. I believe all of them committed after Kevin Young took over as head coach. At the very least, I know for a fact that Crawford and Kanan Catchings were after Kevin Young took over. All of those guys are top 20, all of them. And we haven't even talked about Igor Demin, a Russian guard, 6'8", coming over internationally, so he doesn't show up on the rankings at 247 Sports. Other places rank him, but a lot of places struggle to rank, compare the internationals to the domestic players. Regardless, Demin is widely considered a lottery pick in the 2025 NBA draft. So you have a lottery-level talent joining your team alongside 4 top 20 recruits in program history. That is an incredible group of talent joining this team this upcoming season. I think if you looked at their transfer portal and you didn't pay attention to the recruiting, you'd be like, it's 2 guys coming in, a big man from Rutgers, a big man from Utah, decent players, but it's not moving the needle all that much. But it's from the recruiting trail, from the high school recruiting that Kevin Young has really shined. And now they have their sights set on the best player in high school basketball, AJ Dybantsa, who took an official visit to Auburn, has unofficially visited BYU, and plans to come back to BYU on an official visit. He is also transferring to play his senior season of high school basketball at a high school in Utah, Hurricane Prep, a high school in Utah. So he's already visited BYU. He's planning to officially visit BYU, and he's playing high school basketball in Utah. Folks, the Cougars are a legit player here. On3 has Auburn in first place on their rankings or on their projections for where he's going to go, but they also have USC in second place. And folks, USC's not in the top 7 for AJ Dybantsa. So not sure I'm taking those On3 numbers all that seriously at this point. But BYU is a very legitimate player here. They realistically could land not only the consensus number one recruit in the 2025 class, but a player widely considered a potential NBA superstar. Dybantsa is 6'9". He's got a 7-foot wingspan, and he has an elite offensive game. He has been a top prospect since he was in middle school. The Paul George comparisons are there for a reason. His ability to score, his pull-up game, he is a legitimate future star. Watching tape of him, it is not hard to see why there is so much excitement about what AJ Dybantsa is capable of bringing at the professional level. The college game is just it's a stopover for him. He is a one and done. He's going to light this college basketball on fire, and then he's going to go probably light the NBA on fire. That is how good this kid is. And going to BYU, even if it's just for a year, which is what a lot of people expect for Igor Demin this season, the Russian guard. If you have back-to-back lottery picks, if Dybantsa goes number 1 and Demin goes in the top 10 this year, 2 top 10 picks in back-to-back years, we could be looking at a resurgence, or I mean, not even really a resurgence, a climb, a apex for BYU basketball could be coming. And for the expectation of, they've finished 5th in their final year in the WCC, they're joining the Big 12, they're going to get waxed. That didn't happen last year, and it sure as heck doesn't look like it's going to happen the next couple of years either. It is a really exciting time to be a BYU basketball fan. And look, if they don't land Dybantsa, if he goes to Auburn, if North Carolina or Kansas makes a big push and lands him, as a lot of people expect could happen, and we're talking about the number 1 recruit going to North Carolina, or the number 1 recruit going to Kansas, and it's just not really that big of a story. Even Alabama wouldn't be that big of a story the way Nate Oates is recruited. The story remains. BYU was in the top 7 for this kid. Kentucky wasn't. Duke wasn't. Those 2 programs were not considered in the top 10 here for Dybantsa, and yet BYU was. That is a storyline. even if they don't land him. Going forward, hard not to feel very excited about the direction of BYU basketball under Coach Kevin Young. Well, BYU may be having a recruiting renaissance, but they are not the only former mid-major team having a big moment this summer. We got one more team to talk about coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about today's sponsor, FanDuel. I love sports, folks. I know you all love sports. We all do. That's why we're listening to sports podcasts here in August, but it is the doldrums. It's the dog days of summer. The sports, they're just not sportsing like we want them to. However, FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And those of you still tune in the Olympics right now, Team USA minus 600 odds. If you're still feeling gold, definitely worth checking out those odds there. Canada and Germany are next. You think Team USA might blow it? Those both have plus 850 odds to take home the gold. Serbia is next. The Fighting Nikola Jokic's, they are at plus 3,500. So folks, head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton here, still talking on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. And you want to hear more about BYU's exciting basketball resurgence? You want to hear more about AJ Dybantsa potentially going to join the Cougars? Check out Locked On Cougars. Jake Hatch, phenomenal job, an OG at Locked On. Definitely check out Locked On Cougars if you haven't. Check out Locked On Big 12 to hear more about Dybantsa and just the state of recruiting in that conference. Drake Toll, phenomenal job on Locked On Big 12. We don't have a Locked On Butler, but that is the team we are talking about next here on the show, the Butler Bulldogs. Just like BYU is having an all-time moment on the recruiting trail, so too is Butler. And yes, Butler is a also fairly recently new team to the Power 5 ranks. Granted, they have been in the Big East for about a decade now, so not nearly as recent of a change as we saw with BYU, who's only been in the Big 12 for a season. But what we're really seeing for Butler is an intentional move by Coach Thad Matta to prioritize landing high-profile recruits in the 2025 class. Maybe this is a little bit of a job security situation. Things haven't been great at Butler the last couple of years. They were 18-15 last year, 9-11 in the Big East, 8th out of 11 in that conference. It's a really good conference. It's a really deep conference, but Butler hasn't really made a lot of headway lately. And there was some wonderings of, like, is Matta's job security in question? And one way to really quiet that is to land a bunch of really good recruits in future classes, because they don't want to fire you if they think they're going to lose, if they're going to have a bunch of top profile players decommit. And right now that would be the case for Thad Matta and the Butler Bulldogs if he were to lose his job. So he's still got to win some basketball games, but landing 3 4-star recruits in the 2025 class, that's a really good place to start and kind of keep some of that job security, keep that seat a little cooler in the short term at least. Right now, we're going to talk about the 3 players that Thad Matta has landed in the 2025 recruiting class, starting with Jack McCaffrey. Jack McCaffrey, 4-star, 113th ranked player in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. He's a 6'8" forward from Iowa City. He's also the younger brother of Patrick McCaffrey, who transferred to Butler this offseason. So the elder McCaffrey, Patrick, has yet to actually play at Butler, but he's going to play at Butler this upcoming season. Then Jack McCaffrey would join the Bulldogs next year. You'd have 2 brothers playing together at Butler. It's a nice story. Their father, Fran McCaffrey, will have to watch their games on TV because Fran McCaffrey, the head coach at Iowa, does not have either of them. Patrick has spent the last 5 years playing for his father at Iowa. He is now transferred to Butler. He will play his final year at Butler. So Patrick and Jack will not actually overlap together, unfortunately. There will be 1 year of Patrick McCaffrey at Butler and then potentially 3, 4, however many years of Jack McCaffrey at Butler, but not playing with his dad, Fran McCaffrey. It's just an odd situation, but a really nice addition for Matta and Butler. Again, when he committed late July 2024, Jack McCaffrey became the highest rated recruit in Butler Bulldogs history, according to 24/7 Sports. 4 days later, that record was broken because Butler landed a commitment from Xavier Stink Robinson. Maybe not my favorite nickname in the world, but certainly a unique one. Stink Robinson, 4-star. He's actually 114th at the 24/7 composite rankings, 1 spot behind Jack McCaffrey, but in 24/7's actual rankings, he is slightly higher. So he moved up to become the highest rated recruit in Butler basketball history at 24/7 Sports. So Jack McCaffrey fell from 1 to 2, held the mantle for 4 days. Now the second highest rated recruit in program history. Highest goes to Stink Robinson, 6'1" point guard from Indianapolis, hometown kid. He's an explosive guard. He's very physical. He's not super big, but he's kind of built like a bowling ball. He moves extremely well for his size, and he should play right away for Butler. Again, these are both 2025 prospects, so you won't see them on the floor this upcoming season for Butler, but they're both guys who should be high-level contributors for the Bulldogs as soon as they're freshmen in the 25-26 season. The third member of the class, he didn't usurp Xavier Robinson or Jack McCaffrey as the top-rated recruit in school history. He's only, I think, sixth? Yes, sixth. That's all. He's the sixth-rated recruit in Butler basketball history, 3-star, 198th nationally. This is Colt Langdon. And Colt Langdon, while the other two are definitely 2025-26 freshmen, Langdon has actually reclassified and is planning to join the Bulldogs this upcoming 2024-25 season. Again, sixth-rated recruit in school history, 3-star, just inside the top 200 for the class, the 2025 class, so his rankings will adjust since he's going to be in 2024 instead. And this kid is an absolute bucket. 25 points per game at Millbrook High School in North Carolina. He is the school's all-time leading scorer, and he only spent 3 years. He only spent 3 years at Millbrook High School, and he leaves as their leader in points. He's planning to, it sounds like he's going to redshirt this year, so he's reclassifying to join Butler a year early, but then he's going to redshirt, kind of get the college experience out of the way while, just learning behind the scenes. That he's going to step presumably into a bigger role right away alongside those other two freshmen in McCaffrey and Stink Robinson. So you'll have two freshmen, one redshirt freshman, all expected to be big time contributors. We're not sure that Langdon's going to redshirt. That's what we've seen on various outlets reporting on Butler have indicated that the plan or the thought is that he's going to redshirt, but you never know. He could start redshirting and they could change their mind, or maybe he just wows them so much in the next couple of months before the season that they decide, hey, we're ready for you right now. We're going to have you play right away. So Butler is in a great spot, just like BYU. They're hitting their stride, and Matta's always been known as a good recruiter. But when he first got to Butler, we didn't see that really kind of play out. And part of it was he took over right around the start of the transfer portal era and the NIL era, and having previous experience recruiting in not those eras. I think every coach had to make an adjustment. For him, there'd been some time off. He comes back. Now he's adjusting to a new era. He's at a new program. I don't know what the NIL situation exactly looks like at Butler, but I think it's fair to think that he was struggling to recruit in those first few years because he was kind of fighting factors that he wasn't super familiar with. Seems like he's in a good spot right now, bringing in some of the best talent that Butler has ever seen in this program, at least rated in high school as some of the best talent they've ever seen. Like we said, 9-11 last year. They added a 3-star player in Evan Haywood, who's going to join the team as a freshman this year, alongside, of course, Colt Langdon. They also added a trio of transfers that are all really intriguing. We mentioned Patrick McCaffrey already. He was a very solid scorer for 5 years at Iowa, playing for his dad, Fran. They also had Jamie Kaiser from Maryland. They had Colby King from Tulane as well. The question for Butler is pretty simple. You got to prove it on the court now. You got to prove it. It's really hard to crack the top 5 in the Big East. This upcoming season, you got UConn's going to be right back up at the top. Creighton's going to be excellent. Marquette may take a little bit of a dip, but they're still going to be a really good team. St. John's and Rick Pitino, they're in a really good spot. Providence finished the year strong. They obviously get Bryce Hopkins back from that injury that he suffered, or at least they're hoping to have him back. We'll see if he's able to start the season or not. You got Georgetown with Ed Cooley. They're moving up. They're still probably not going to be great, but they're moving in the right direction. At least Butler's in that conversation as well. But this is a Villanova. We'll see what they look like. I'm a little less confident about them right now, but they got Wooga Poplar. That's going to be huge for them. Eric Dixon as well. So it's going to be, Butler has to prove it. Matta almost certainly bought himself a year. This team is not going to fire him until after the 25-26 season, unless things go completely awry this year, which they probably won't. If they finish slightly above 500, slightly below 500 in the Big East, just like they did last year, people will start to get annoyed. There will be rumblings, but unless all of these players decommit, they're going to stick it out. They're going to go through to 25-26, bring these kids on campus and see what it looks like from there. I think Matta bought himself probably 2 years, frankly, again, unless things go very awry for the next few years. But we've started to see him kind of get his bearings and be prepared to recruit at a level that keeps Butler competitive. Now you got to go win those games on the court, and it's going to be a fun and interesting season to see how Butler can do, knowing that they got this really fun class following suit after this season. Well, we're closing out the show talking about Team USA's 3-on-3 men's team. They really struggled at the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. Would a group of college teammates have done better? We got 5 options to discuss coming up in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what helps keep your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your car every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, folks, segment 3, still Eddie Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast, and we're switching over our conversation here to talk Olympic basketball specifically. We are talking 3-on-3 basketball. Relatively new to the Olympic Games, and it hasn't been a sport that USA basketball has particularly prioritized. And that really showed up this year. We saw the Team USA women's team did secure a bronze medal. They were expected to compete for gold. Bronze is a little bit disappointing. It looked for a long time like they were not going to medal at all. They took down Team Canada. Haley Van Lith, current college basketball player, was a catalyst for them winning that game. But on the men's side, they were one of the worst teams in the entire pool on the men's side for 3-on-3 basketball. And part of that was the injury to Jimmer Fredette. He suffered a hip injury. It sounds like he's actually going to be out for like 6 months or so. And that sucks. I feel for Jimmer Fredette. I feel for his fans. I feel for just him personally. And I don't want to sound like we're denigrating him or the rest of the players on this team, Canyon Barry or Devin Travis or anybody else, because this isn't about them specifically. What has happened in the aftermath of Team USA getting smoked by the Netherlands 21-6 to eliminate them officially from any kind of medal contention? What has happened is there's been a lot of discourse online about why USA basketball doesn't prioritize the men's side for 3-on-3. Why aren't they just throwing, Jalen Brunson and Cooper Flagg and Chet Holmgren onto the 3-on-3 roster and just going and pocketing a gold medal like it's cake? Because they would. That's just a hypothetical roster. But any roster of the 4 US-born NBA players who didn't make Team USA, you pretty much put any 4 of them, combine them together, toss them on that team, they're gonna probably win gold. There's a simple reason. It's because of FIBA's rules. FIBA has very specific eligibility rules for Olympic 3-on-3 basketball. Your roster has to include 2 players who are ranked inside the top 10 of that country in terms of FIBA's international rankings. Your other 2 players have to be within the top 50. In order to rank highly in FIBA international rankings, you have to play a lot of FIBA 3-on-3 basketball. You have to participate in the FIBA 3-on-3 World Tour. NBA players don't want to do this. It interferes with the NBA season. So teams are going to say, heck no, you can't go borrow Jalen Brunson during the season so he can play some 3-on-3 basketball. They're not going to do that. And the players probably don't want to do that either. They don't want to risk injury. Like, yeah, they want to represent their country, but players really want to represent their country on the 5-on-5 side. They don't necessarily care as much about it on the 3-on-3 side. And the way that the rules are set up, you have to participate continually throughout the year in 3-on-3 tournaments in order to get up to that level of ranking. So that's why you're not seeing it happen. It happens on the women's side because the WNBA season is about half as long as the NBA season. And while most women's basketball players play overseas when the WNBA season is not going on, the ones who do not often participate in these 3-on-3 events. That's why you see Ryan Howard, who's a former Kentucky player, number 1 overall pick a few years ago. She represented on Team USA. That's why you see De'Erica Hamby, who's a former Syracuse player, who is a WNBA player as well. Cameron Brink was on the roster before she suffered her torn ACL, so she would have represented despite being a WNBA player. But you're not seeing that on the men's side. because of the way the schedule works out. So it's not really surprising when you're kind of faced with that data as to why this isn't happening. But what if it was? And specifically, we could make any combination of NBA teams. I was speaking on my other show, Locked on Zags. A Zags roster of Chet Holmgren, Corey Kispert, Jalen Suggs, that probably wins gold. There are tons of combinations out there. You take all the Villanova Knicks and you throw them on a roster, you probably win gold. Like, there are tons of options that would work. But I want to look at it from a perspective of current college basketball teammates. And specifically, they would have to be able to represent Team USA. So sorry, we don't have VJ Edgecombe on here. If we could put a roster of Norchad Omier, VJ Edgecombe, and Jeremy Roach, yeah, that probably wins gold. Two of those three guys wouldn't get to play for Team USA. So we're trying to focus on players who would actually represent Team USA. I picked 5 schools. We're going to go through them rapid fire here to close out the show. Duke, give me Cooper Flagg, Tyrese Proctor, and Caleb Foster. That is a tremendous roster. Are they big enough? That's the question. Flagg is a capable rim protector, even if he is 6'9". I think the size is the only issue there, but in 3-on-3, you want one-on-one defenders. You want guys who can defend at the point of attack. Cooper Flagg has that ability and has the size to be able to be a mismatch problem on the other end. Duke, to me, would be a really clear-cut potential gold medal winner in 3-on-3 basketball. But the most complete team, I think, might actually be Kansas, because you could field a roster for Kansas of Hunter Dickinson, AJ Storr, and DeJuan Harris. A pass-first point guard, a high-level scorer on the wing and a two-way player, and then a dominant big force on the block in Hunter Dickinson. These rosters usually have 4 players, so I would have KJ Adams be my 4th, mostly so you could switch out offense, defense with Adams and Dickinson, because Dickinson's going to get put on skates by some of those Olympic guards if they can get those switches. That's the one kind of knock on this roster, but give me that team. I think they're complete. I think they would be able to win a gold or at least compete for it in this team, in this in this Olympic Games here for 3-on-3 basketball. Next couple, we got Alabama. Mark Sears, Chris Youngblood, Cliff Omoruyi. Give me Grant Nelson as the 4th there. Again, similar to the Kansas roster. Nelson and Omoruyi can kind of switch out for a little bit more floor spacing, a little bit more shooting with Nelson, maybe a little bit more defense with Omoruyi. Again, it kind of is going to be matchup dependent there. But with Youngblood and Sears, you have elite shooting, you have elite driving ability. You just have a mix of everything that you really reasonably need on a 3-on-3 roster. So I think that team would work out really well. Give me Arkansas. Number 4 here, John Calipari, the roster that he brought in, you could make a lot of combinations work pretty well for you here, even if you have to exclude somebody like Zvonimir Ivisic. Give me John L. Davis, Trevin Brazil, and Jonas Adu. Give me Adu Fierro as your 4th on that roster. Shooting is going to be an issue. Shooting is always an issue. John Calipari, I know last year's team for Kentucky had some great shooters, but traditionally that's not been an area of strength for John Calipari rosters. And this team here, that would be the issue. Is the floor spacing enough? But I think the versatility that you have with Fierro coming off the bench can kind of play all those positions. Brazil's lengthy. There's a lot of length and range on that roster. Adu, is he tough enough? I think that's a question we might see come up a few times, but I think this roster would be very, very good in a 3-on-3 caliber setting. And then last but not least, Gonzaga, a lot of different combinations. Unfortunately for Gonzaga, Ryan Nembhard would not be eligible for this roster as he is Canadian, like his brother Andrew, who is representing Team Canada at the Olympics right now. So give me Nolan Hickman, give me Michael Ajayi, the Pepperdine transfer, give me Graham Ike in the front court as well. And then give me, speaking of Arkansas, give me Arkansas transfer Caleb Battle coming off the bench. Ike might struggle defending in space, but Michael Ajayi could play your center spot if you needed him to. He's 6'80", averaged 10 rebounds a game last year at Pepperdine. So I think you could also go battle, or you could go small with Hickman, Battle, Ajayi. You could have Ike and Ajayi in the front court and just be really big in that situation. Continuity is maybe a factor here, as most of these guys haven't played together, with Ajayi and Battle being 2 of the very few newcomers for Gonzaga this upcoming season. But I still think that's a team that would legitimately compete for a gold medal at these games. Going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Be back on Wednesday with Leaf Tulane. We got some fun stuff planned, and then Isaac and I will be back later in the week as we get into the thick of the college basketball offseason. We'll have more Olympic coverage, more recruiting coverage, more transfer portal stuff, all sorts of fun stuff coming your way on Locked On College Basketball. Thanks again for listening, folks. Until next time, as always, peace out.